All right, what is going on, guys? I am late to my original time of doing this live today. I tried to do it at 2 o'clock Central Standard Time, and you're probably going to laugh at me, but the first time I recorded the whole thing without making sure my microphone worked, so there was no audio, which is really funny since I'm an audio engineer and I didn't even check that. And then the second time I went and I did this, I forgot to hit the go live button. So I recorded the video a second time and it never went live. So yeah, needless to say, I've been having technical difficulties, but this time my mic works. This time I hit the go live button and I think we are finally ready. Let me get a quick little drink here. All right, cool. So today I'm going to discuss the most effective way that tech pros can nail their nutrition and shred the stubborn belly fat. Now, if you're not a tech professional and you're watching this on the recording, don't worry. Most of the concepts I'm going to be covering today will apply to most people who are struggling with weight loss. But I wanted to focus specifically on kind of the things that guys in tech are struggling with. But so, um, sorry, recorded this twice already. Let's just jump right in. First thing I want to focus on is the big lie that most guys believe around losing weight. And the first big lie that a lot of guys have been told in um as far as like losing weight is concerned is they've been taught that they need to be on restrictive diets. Like that's that you got to eat in a way that's very restrictive, and that's just not a long-term strategy, right? Like a lot of guys have been told they have to go vegan, they have to go carnivore, they have to go keto, they have to whatever, and or that they have to just eat like steamed vegetables and rice, and that is a lie that many guys believe around losing weight, is that you have to eat that way and you don't. The other thing is that eating healthy is enough. A lot of guys believe they just need to eat healthy and they'll lose weight. Um, Eating healthy is a part of it. I mean, you want to eat healthy, you want to put good food in your body, but that is not the answer to losing weight. So if you're struggling with losing weight and you're trying to eat healthy and it's still not working, don't worry. I'm going to get to how we can solve these problems later, but just know that eating healthy alone is not enough to lose the weight. Another thing, a lot of guys believe that you need to avoid carbs. Carbs are not the enemy, guys. If you don't like eating carbs, that's totally fine. I don't eat a lot of carbs, but avoiding carbs is not the solution to losing weight. It's not the carbs are not the reason why you are overweight. They're not the reason why you can't lose weight. And a lot of guys believe that avoiding carbs is the solution, and it's absolutely not. Another thing that a lot of guys believe is the solution is taking supplements or taking some kind of medications. And while I'm not exactly a specialist on all the medications and things like that out there, the thing is that supplements, for the most part, most of them are crap, and most of them are used to market towards your pain points, and they're just not going to be what you need. And at the end of the day, it's still going to boil down to the key concepts of getting your nutrition right, which we're going to dive into in a bit. But a lot of guys resort to supplements or shortcuts, or they even go as far as to take things like Ozempic. And if you're dealing with some serious, like morbidly obese issues, then perhaps that could potentially help you. But generally speaking, if you're just a guy who's got some extra weight, that is not the route to go. That is not the solution to your problems. Sorry. Why these don't work. So the reason that these are not the solution to your problems, first off, restrictive diets are not sustainable. If you've ever been on any kind of a diet where you felt like you weren't able to eat things that you wanted to eat, you understand that that only lasted for so long. That lasted for a few months, and then eventually you probably fell off. You eventually said screw it and you had a pizza or you had whatever, and eventually you just quit eating that way. And then any weight you may have lost, any progress you may have seen, you end up losing it, because while eating steamed vegetables and grilled chicken might have got you in the shape that you wanted to be in, you hated eating that way, and then you inevitably fell off. It's important to understand that getting in shape and staying in shape is not a marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. This is something where you're going to have a long-term strategy. It's not something where you do it for a little bit, then you fall off. It's something where it's a lifestyle change that you're going to want to maintain for the rest of your life. The next thing is eating healthy. So When you're eating healthy, a lot of guys just think that they're doing enough. They think that eating healthy is all that they need to be able to lose weight. And I'm going to use an example here for you, right? Where eating healthy may not necessarily just on its own be the solution. So, take for example, you opt for a healthy snack today. You opt for let's say an apple and some almond butter, right? I think most of us can agree that an apple and almond butter is a pretty healthy decision, right, for a snack as opposed to something else. But when you take into consideration that almond butter, 2 tablespoons of that's almost 200 calories. That apple's about 70. And if you cut that apple into 6 slices, you start dipping it in that almond butter and eating it. Yeah, it was healthy. It was good quality food, sure. But you might end up eating like 6 or 7 or 8 tablespoons of almond butter and then downing like 6 or 700 calories plus the apple. And then where you thought you were making a healthy decision just with one little snack, you ended up eating almost an entire meal's worth of calories. And now you're going to struggle with losing weight, right? And that's where eating healthy can be almost counterproductive, because you think that by eating healthy you're doing the right things or you're doing enough, and in reality you're not. You're still eating too much. So that's one of the bigger issues with just the mindset of like eating healthy is enough. The next thing with supplements is supplements are just not enough. Why supplements don't work is that usually, again, a lot of them are fake. A lot of them are marketed towards your pain points, and they're just not going to really help you. They're gimmicky. And at the end of the day, weight loss for most people, unless you're dealing with some kind of underlying health issues that is really compromising your ability to lose weight, then for most people, weight loss really boils down to calories in, calories out. And supplements may help you repress your hunger. They may, help speed up the process in some kind of way. But generally speaking, it's still going to come down to you eating right and being consistent in the long run. Not to mention, a lot of this stuff just is not good for your health. A lot of people are taking things like Ozempic, and I'm not, well versed in Ozempic. I don't know a lot about it, but again, if you're just a guy who's got some extra body weight, then you don't need to go that route. It can potentially have negative health impacts, and I don't want to see people do that. They don't have to do that. It really just boils down to getting, a few key things right, which leads me into the next part of this live, which is the pillars to getting your nutrition right. So the first one is to meet your macro goals. Make sure that your macros are catered towards whatever it is that your goals are, whether that's building muscle, losing weight, or both, and track it. So that way you know that you're actually hitting those goals. So, I know a lot of people don't like to track, but especially when you're in the process of losing weight, when you're at a point where, you're still trying to get in shape, it's so important for you to track and to keep track of what you're doing. Once you get to a point where you're in shape, and you get your nutrition dialed in, tracking is not as important. Not that you shouldn't do it or that it won't be helpful, but it's just not going to be as urgent once you get, or as big of a deal once you get everything dialed in to a normal routine that you follow all the time, right? But when you're first starting out, tracking is going to be super important. Making sure that you eat enough calories or don't eat too many calories, or even, eat enough protein. You don't want to eat too little protein, things like that. You want to make sure that whatever your goals are, that your macros are catered towards that. You want to make sure you're eating enough protein for muscle growth and not eating too many calories to where you're going to, struggle with losing weight. And I know I mentioned muscle growth there. I know we're here talking about losing weight, but most guys who want to lose weight don't just want to lose weight. They also want to put on some muscle. They want to tone up. And it's important to understand that the more muscle your body has, the more calories your body is going to burn at rest. Essentially meaning when you get more muscle, you become more of a fat burning machine. So losing weight becomes easier when you start putting on muscle, right? The next thing is sustainability. So how do we get sustainability down? First off, you have to enjoy how you eat. If you hate how you eat, like, I could put you on the best plan, the best diet plan, whatever, right? And if you hate it, then it doesn't matter. You have to be able to sustain this for the rest of your life. You have to enjoy how you eat. And enjoying how you eat means not depriving yourself of everything that you love. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can't ever enjoy cookies or ice cream or anything like that, but you've got to have your plan built out in such a way that it is catered towards your goals. All right. Have access to healthy options. So, a lot of guys out there, they like their unhealthy food. Me, I love sweets, man. Like, I got a sweet tooth. I love cinnamon rolls and I love ice cream. And when I decide that I'm going to indulge in having a sweet tooth, I usually opt for healthier things. For example, obviously fruit is a healthier option if you have a sweet tooth, but like let's say ice cream. Instead of going and getting a big bucket of ice cream, I decide that I'm going to go get like a pint of Halo Top, which is a lot less calories, a lot less sugar. Is it healthy? Maybe not. It's probably still not that healthy for you, but it's still a better option than going with a whole tub of like cookies and cream ice cream and eating the whole tub in a weekend, right? And making sure that your diet's non-restrictive. Some people go very, very deep into the one end of the spectrum or the other. They go all vegan, they go all keto, they go all carnivore. And at the end of the day, it's important to understand that whatever's going to work for you is whatever you can maintain. So if you like being all carnivore, then go all carnivore. If you like being vegan, be vegan, right? If you like being keto, be keto, right? But if it's not going to work for you and it feels like a struggle to eat that way, then just know that while it might work in the short term, it'll never work in the long term. So you have to enjoy how you eat. And then the last thing is have nutrient dense foods, right? Like there was actually a study done where a guy he ate nothing but Twinkies for like a month, I think, and he proved that you can lose weight eating nothing but Twinkies, which Twinkies are just pure junk, right? But he proved a point that it isn't really a matter of what you eat, it's a matter of calories in, calories out. And in his case, he was able to lose weight eating nothing but Twinkies. However, I bet you he still felt like shit. I bet you he had like no energy and felt awful after the end of that like month, right? So you want to eat nutrient dense foods. You want to, eat fruits, eat vegetables, things like that. Like, again, if you want to go like hardcore vegan, carnivore, whatever, like, you don't necessarily have to eat specific. I'm not telling you like if you're carnivore that you have to eat vegetables to be healthy or whatever, but I'm saying that eat foods that are nutrient dense. Don't eat a bunch of nutrient deprived foods, right? Eat things that are going to be good for your body and give your body what it needs. So those are the main pillars to actually getting to a point where you can lose weight. Eating, meeting your macro goals, having sustainability in your nutrition and in your diet, and eating healthy foods. These are going to be the key things to staying healthy, staying lean, losing weight, etc. Those are the main things, right? But now let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's break them down. So, how do you hit your macro goals? What are your macro goals? Well, for the most part, there's a lot of macros out there you can focus on. There's a lot of different things that your body can potentially need, but when we're talking specifically about muscle growth and weight loss, which is what I'm talking about today. I'm not talking about, you know, making sure that you necessarily have the most well-rounded diet for perfect health. Exactly. I'm talking just purely about muscle growth and weight loss. Then first thing is having enough protein. If you're wanting to build muscle, you have to have enough protein. Now, some people will say different ranges, but generally speaking, I think most people settle on the around 0.8 to 1.2 or 1.3 grams of protein per pound of body weight. I like to stick to the 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. That keeps the math super simple. So if you weigh 150 pounds, eat 150 grams of protein. Understand though that you can eat a little less than your body weight in terms of in grams of protein per pound of body weight. You can eat a little bit less than that and still build muscle. But it's just easier to keep up with, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. I think that's pretty easy for most people to do the math on, right? Let's see. But it's also important to understand that, like, let's say you're a 200-pound guy who's trying to drop down to 170 pounds, right? You're not necessarily trying to eat 200 grams of protein when you're trying to lose weight. You're trying to eat the amount of protein that you need for the weight, for the target that you're trying to get to. So if you're wanting to be 170 pounds of pure muscle, then you don't need to eat 200 grams of protein when you weigh 200 pounds. You need to eat 170 grams of protein, right? So just keep that in mind. The next thing is to know how many calories that you're supposed to eat. So there's a couple simple equations that I usually go by, and these are not, deeply ingrained in science. These are just very simple, very basic equations to get you in the ballpark, to get you started, and they typically work. Dialing in your calories is going to take a little bit of trial and error probably, and this is why tracking is so important, so you can be aware of how many calories you're eating. But the equations that I like to use to just get me ballpark is either body weight times 15 will give you an idea of your maintenance level of calories. Now, if you subtract, let's say 500 from that, now you'll have an idea of where a healthy deficit would probably be for you to start losing weight. So another thing to mention is that a pound of fat is 3,500 calories. And so if you are in a 500 calorie deficit 7 days a week, in theory, you should burn 3,500 calories that week, essentially burning 1 pound of fat per week. Now, that's in theory. It's not necessarily exactly how it's going to work. It's not always that linear, but in theory, that's how it should work, right? Another, a little bit more specific method that I just started using is to take your body weight times 11 and then multiply it by a certain number depending on your current activity level. So if you take your body weight times 11 and then multiply that by 1.2 if you live a sedentary lifestyle, 1.4 if you're active 1 to 3 days a week, 1.6 if you are active 3 to 5 days a week, and 1.8 if you're 6 to 7 days a week. And that should give you a better idea of where your calories should be for a day, right? That should give you a better idea of how many calories that you are supposed to eat to go through every day, right? And then, of course, you subtract from that so that way you're on a deficit. Tracking is super easy. These days, there are apps out there. There's apps like MyFitnessPal. There's a variety of other apps out there, but apps like MyFitnessPal make it so easy to track. You've got some of your favorite restaurants in there, and it's just mindless. And it's only like $80 a year, or it's free if you want to deal with ads and things like that. But tracking is so easy today. And doing that is going to be crucial when you're on the journey to actually losing weight. The next thing, let's break down sustainability. So, first thing is enjoying how you eat. I mentioned this earlier. If you hate how you eat, you are not going to be able to stick to it. Nobody can, not me, not anyone. So you need to have a plan that you like, that you enjoy, that's non restrictive, that doesn't take away things that you enjoy. So you can still enjoy, some of your favorite treats and your favorite snacks, but you're going to have to do it within the context of a nutrition plan that's catered towards you building the muscle that you want to build, losing the weight that you want to lose, hitting the macros that you're supposed to hit, and then having those things that you enjoy fit within the confines of that nutrition plan. That way you can still enjoy the things that you've always enjoyed, but without exceeding your macro goals. And this will ultimately allow you to stay consistent, because if you like how you eat, you're never going to fall off. The reason people fall off is they hate how they eat, and then they miss something that they can't have anymore, and then they have it, and then they eventually just say fuck it, and then they start eating crap, and then they fall off and they lose all their gains, and we don't want that. For me, I enjoy how I eat, so it's pretty easy for me to stay lean throughout the year. There are sacrifices you're going to have to make. Like, you're not going to be able to sit here and go eat Pizza Hut 4 times in a week anymore. And you're not going to be able to drink 4 sodas a day probably anymore. You're going to have to exercise some discipline, and you're going to have to say no to things sometimes, especially when you're in the weight loss process. Like, when you're in the process of losing weight, you're going to have to be a lot more disciplined. But once you get down, you start, like, you actually lose the weight and you get to where you want to be, then you can afford a little bit more flexibility. For me, sometimes I still enjoy, like, ramen's one of my favorite things. Authentic Japanese ramen's one of my favorite things. I'll go enjoy that. I love pizza. I'll eat a whole freaking pizza sometimes, and but yet I'm still in shape because I track. For the most part, I track. Sometimes I don't, but I track, and I'm pretty consistent with how I eat. So I'm able to do that, and I'm in shape, and I'm staying active, so I'm able to keep that up, right? Um, Always have healthy options. Always have access to healthy options. So, um, again, like I mentioned earlier, if you want ice cream, instead of ice cream, regular ice cream that has a bunch of sugar and a bunch of calories, opt for something that's lower calorie. Um, if you really, really like potato chips, instead of getting potato chips, maybe, like, there's these like vegan puffs that I really like. They're still kind of high in calories, but they're a healthier option. They're made with healthier oils. They are higher in protein. They're lower in calories, and they're amazing, right? So there's always usually healthy alternatives to some of the stuff that we like so much. If you love soda, then try kombucha. Kombucha is kind of like soda. It's really, really good. It's more expensive, sure, but it will be a healthier alternative. Make sure you have access to those healthier options and those healthier alternatives, right? And then you'll be able to still enjoy the things that you love without fucking up your physique, right? And still be able to lose weight. The next thing is nutrient dense foods. So eating foods that provide you with what it needs. Like I mentioned earlier, you want to eat foods that are healthy, not deprived of nutrition. Limit your simple carbs and your simple sugars. So, things like bleached white bread, Doritos, potato chips, French fries. These things are just deprived of nutrition. They have no nutritional value. They're basically empty carbs. They're a bunch of calories, and you really want to limit those things. If you're going to have things like that, have healthier options. Like, for example, instead of bleached white bread, go get the Ezekiel bread out of the freezer section in the grocery store. Sure, it's a bit more expensive, but it's full of nutrition. It's a lot more nutritional and a lot healthier than that bleached bread is. And and that will ultimately make you feel better, because we're not just talking about losing weight. Like, you can lose weight eating junk, that's been proven, but don't you want to feel good and live a healthier lifestyle overall? Right? So you want to substitute some of these unhealthy things for lower calorie, healthier options. And trust me, there's plenty of healthy options out there. You don't have to feel like you're just losing everything that you love, right? And the next thing is the simple sugars, right? So simple sugars are things like candy, crappy candy and soda and stuff like that. Like, cut that stuff out. Eat more fruits. Eat better sugars, right? And also, you want to avoid unhealthy oils. You want to avoid unhealthy sugar substitutes, and you want to, avoid nutrient deprived foods. So, things like canola oil and vegetable oil are really bad for you, and that stuff gets put in food all the time. So you might go out to eat, think you're making a healthy option, and the stuff's covered in or cooked in canola oil or vegetable oil. That's not good for you, and it's high in calories. Another thing, sugar substitutes. So a lot of people will drink these like low calorie, low sugar, energy drinks or whatever. I'm trying to remember the name of some of them off the top of my head, but point is or another one is protein bars. Protein bars are advertised as being healthy. The thing is that a lot of the time they're super high in calories for what they are, and then they're loaded down with a bunch of processed crap, and then they have artificial sugars like sucralose in them that are not good for you. So you think you're making a healthy option and getting something that's low sugar, and it's filled with sucralose or it's filled with other crap. And it's not a healthier option. It's kind of like just picking a different evil, so to speak, right? So avoid those things and opt for healthier options. There are tons of better options out there. Things that are sweetened with stevia, things that are sweetened with monk fruit. These are healthier options. Again, nothing's perfect, right? Like, I'm not saying these things are like perfectly healthy for you, but they're better options than eating a whole thing of Chips Ahoy cookies, right? So you want to avoid all that kind of stuff. And then, do what you can to get the most organic, healthiest food possible. See if in town that if you have a local butcher. I have a local butcher here in Nashville, and they have fresh, organic, never been processed, and like no hormones added, no hormones in general. Meat, so I get pretty much all of my meat there for the most part. Well, not all of it. It is a bit expensive, and I know eating healthy can be super expensive, so I don't get all my meat there, but I get all my ground beef there, and I get some of my other meats there. And, opting for, again, healthier options in terms of like the vegetables and stuff you get. A lot of people will get things that are, pre-made, but then they have like a bunch of sugars or oils in them. Like, get fresh vegetables to the best of your ability, to the best of your abilities, at the grocery store, because like, as we know, in America at least, a lot of our foods have chemicals and processing and stuff. So it can be really tough. And of course, that stuff can be expensive, but always do the best that you can. It's not a matter of being perfect. It's just a matter of doing the best that you can. And understand, for weight loss, that you don't have to eat, perfectly healthy to lose weight, but you want to be healthier. You want to have energy, because if you're eating crappy foods while you might lose weight, it's going to have negative impacts on other areas of your life, on your energy, on everything. So that is pretty much the main concepts. You really want to make sure you're hitting your macro goals, not eating too many calories, eating enough protein, and overall just tracking your food, making sure that you are hitting your goals every day. Sustainability. So making sure that you're on a nutrition plan that you actually enjoy, because you don't want to be on a diet that you hate. That way you can keep this forever, because this is a long-term solution. This is a complete lifestyle change forever. So you want to make sure it's something that you can keep up with for the rest of your life. Think of this as a lifelong decision. And then the last thing is, of course, nutrient dense foods. Always make the healthiest options that you can. and don't be too strict on yourself. Allow yourself to enjoy some things that you enjoy sometimes, but overall make the healthier options. And those are the main pillars to losing weight and keeping it off for the rest of your life. If you enjoyed this video, and you're watching live on LinkedIn, be sure to comment simple nutrition, or yeah, simple nutrition in the comments, and I will send you over my simplified nutrition guide. This is a very simple, straightforward guide to really help you with your nutrition. And let me know, how you like it. Let me know that it's helped you. And of course, if you're watching this on the replay and you want my simplified guide, this will simplified nutrition guide. This will be getting uploaded to YouTube, so you can always just message me on one of my social media platforms, and I will send it your way. So that is how you lose weight and keep it off for the rest of your life. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.